My name is Erica Johnson. I am Henrico Federal Credit Union's TruStage agent. Today I want to talk a little bit or a lot of bit about how to protect your assets. Not all insurance is the same. If you have stuff you want to protect, you want to keep in the event of an accident, it's very important to know your coverage. We'll start with auto insurance. Again, not all auto insurance is the same. Coverages and options vary from company to company. With TruStage, I have 15 companies that I can shop you through. So depending on the coverages and the coverage that you need and you're looking for, the company you're with really makes a difference. So we're just going to briefly go over auto insurance, how to understand your coverages, explain additional and optional coverages you may not think to ask about, your Liberty Mutual discounts, as well as choice. That's the other company options that I have, and then review your benefits with Liberty Mutual. By the end of this seminar, you'll be able to answer these questions here. How does your coverage, one second, I'm gonna move this box here, differ between collision and it's called comprehensive or other than collision, and having a tree fall on your car? Are damages to your car from flood, fire, and hail covered? And if you are at fault in an accident and someone gets seriously injured, how would you pay for damages that are above your current limits? Now, most of the time when you hear about liability, that's what is required by DMV. Full coverage is optional. Liability is just what you're required to carry if you have a car registered in the state of Virginia. It is damage to the property of others, injuries to passengers in another car if you cause a crash. Your liability limits can be found on your deck page. Now, the state minimums in Virginia are 25, 50, 25. Those first two numbers, as you can see here, are bodily injury. So you would have a minimum of $25,000 for one person being in the car, $50,000 if there's more than one person in the car. That third number is property damage, which is typically is $25,000, but it covers any property, or not even just cars. If you run into a mailbox, into a home, whatever the case may be, that is the coverage that would come into play in those situations. Those can be found on your deck page. And if you, again, have stuff, if you're a homeowner, if you have boats, cars, loans, things of that sort, you would want to have higher than the required minimums. As you can see here, this person has 100, 300, 100. So they would have $100,000 per person, $300,000 per accident. This also covers you if the person comes back and sues you after the fact. You can get sued for an accident up to 3 years after the accident period. So it's not just for those initial hospital bills. It's very, very important if, again, mainly homeowners and people who have things they need to protect, income that they want to protect, that you have more than the state minimums. Collision coverage is the coverage everybody knows about. It's coverage for your car if, again, you hit another car or an object. The deductible makes a difference as far as how much you want to pay out of pocket if you were responsible for an accident, or, again, running into a garage or into a mailbox. I have a lot of customers who don't realize what deductibles they have. They just take the cheapest option. They take those $1,000, $2,000 deductibles, and then when something happens, they're very surprised that it's either not covered because the damage falls below the deductible, or that they have to come out of pocket that large amount. So please consider how much money you would want to put down to get your car fixed if, knock on wood, you were to have a bad day. Oh, and then also just so people know, collision coverage also covers you if you were to hit something and somebody were to, the collision coverage is I'm trying to think of a situation it would come into play. There's a very fine situation where collision would also come into play, but mostly it's with you hitting again another car or a mailbox or home, things like that. Other than collision coverage or comprehensive coverage is called other than collision because it covers everything other than collision. If your car is stolen, if it's vandalized, if you hit a deer or an animal, a dog, a roller, a cat, whatever the case may be, if a rock hits your windshield, that's all falling under that other than collision. I typically suggest that other than collision is below 250. If you were to walk outside and see a tree on your car, it's a lot easier to come up with 250 or 100 or nothing for something that's not your fault. I had a customer who was driving and they drove through, the road had flooded. That fell under comprehensive. Things like that out of your control. It's just easier to not anticipate that cost. And then also it's comes into play if the car is totaled, they take out less money out of your total loss check in order for you to replace the car. These are coverages. The medical payments coverage is optional in Virginia. It covers you and any kin in the car. Now, typically, if an accident is your fault, there's no bodily injury coverage for you. If you have to end up going to the hospital, those hospital bills come out of your pocket. If you're not at fault, you still have access to the medical payments coverage. You would get additional payments for any bills that accrue from you being in an accident. Again, it also helps kin in the car. So if you have your cousin, your daughters, your uncles, anybody that's with you, they can tap into that medical payments coverage, even if the other person's policy is paying out. The underinsured, uninsured motorist coverage is required with the liability. I have a lot of people who don't know that they have this coverage. That's why I always make sure your liability coverage is also where you need it to be, because it's typically a mirror of your liability coverage. So if you have 100, 300, 100 for liability, you will also have 100, 300, 100 for uninsured and underinsured motorist coverage. What that means is if somebody who is uninsured or maybe possibly passing through the state, so they have less than the state minimums, they don't have enough insurance to cover the accident, you can tap into that coverage to make sure that your property and your medical bills are taken care of. It's typically used in most commonly hit and run situations. So if you have a Tesla or a car that costs more than $25,000, you may want to consider upping your liability limits so that your underinsured or uninsured motorist coverage is higher to cover your vehicle if somebody were to total your car and then run off, which is very, very common. Same thing with bodily injury. Somebody were to hit you and not have any insurance, and you have children or husband, family members that live with you and are typically in the car with you, you would want to make sure that you had enough bodily injury coverage to cover everybody in the household should somebody get hurt, because typically that $25,000 to $50,000 range is not enough. I see those liability limits maxed out all the time. It's very, very common. It's everybody thinks it's something that happens to somebody else, and it happens very, very quickly. And so it's something to consider, again, if you have a large family or if you have a car that costs more than that $25,000, those basic coverage minimums. The optional coverages that come up the most for me are roadside assistance and rental car coverage. I get calls all the time, people who call and don't know that they don't have these coverage. They'll tell me, but I have full coverage. Roadside assistance and rental car coverage are not automatically included in full coverage. They are optional, and there is also a range of amounts that you can get. Roadside assistance can vary anywhere from $50 to, I've seen it as high as $500 to $50. Again, that depends on the company. But if you travel out of state a lot, or if you're far from home, you having basic roadside, that $50 is not going to get you too far. It's also important to ask about it. If you did not ask for it when you got your auto policy, please do not assume that you have it, because I get the calls all the time. Rental car coverage is also something that will come up in the event of an accident, whether it's your fault or not. Again, if you have to use that uninsured or underinsured motorist, you would use your rental car coverage. So if somebody hits you and runs off and you don't have rental car coverage, you would need that on there. There's also a range. It can range anywhere from $900 to about $3,000. That makes a difference in the type of car you have. If you have a big body truck and you're in an accident and you need it for more than 20, 30 days, you're not going to want to have those $900 limits, because you would run out of coverage very quickly, because those cars can range anywhere from $50 to $60 to $80 a day, which is a lot more than your basic sedans, which typically run from $25 to $30 a day. So if you have big trucks, things like that, please check your rental car coverage to make sure that you have enough in the event of an accident, whether it's your fault or not. Now, with Liberty Mutual, because you are Henrico Federal Credit Union members, you automatically qualify for those exclusive group savings. When you call in, just let them know you are an Henrico Federal Credit Union member, and you automatically qualify for additional discounts. Those are very common. The rest of these are very common: multi-policy, multi-car, hybrid vehicles, good student. Right Track and Buy Mile are specific to Liberty Mutual. Right Track is, we have an app now where you would drive with the app active, and it measures things like the time you drive, mileage driven, hard brakes, things like that. And your discount can get up to 30%. You get 10% just for participating, but once the program is over, you only need to do it for about 90 days. You can maximize that discount at 30%. Buy Mile is good for individuals who have low mileage vehicles or multiple vehicles and less drivers than there are cars in the house. We send you a little device, you put it in the car, and instead of you being charged like you drive that car every single day, you would only be charged for pennies on the mile when the car is driven. Buy Mile works best for vehicles that are driven less than 9,000 miles a year. But I can always quote it. I always quote worst case scenario for you, so you have an idea of the maximum amount you would be charged. But it's been saving my customers up to 40% on their auto policies. Oh, and those are a little bit more into the Right Track program with Buy Mile. With Liberty Mutual, you get a local licensed sales agent, me. We have programs with accident forgiveness, new car replacement. We offer gap insurance if it's not offered on your current vehicle, lifetime repair guarantee on our claim services, better car replacement. There's just, again, these are specific to Liberty Mutual. Not all companies offer these, and there are companies who have other benefits that they can offer. It's very important that you ask your insurance company what they can offer you, because you may be losing out on some benefits that you didn't know about. We customize your insurance to make sure you get what you need. Never shortchange your insurance. I will always quote apples to apples, and then we'll have a short discussion about what you may need, and then I will give you something that's suggested typically better than what you currently have. I'll shop for you through all the companies that I have to make sure you're getting the best deal and the best coverages for what you need for yourself and your family. We have Liberty Mutual has an app that you can very simply pull up all of your coverage options. If you're walking through this presentation, you can pull out your auto policy now. Most companies have them, and walk through me with this, but we do also have an app. You can file and manage your claims through this app. It's super simple. I'm with Liberty Mutual, of course, so it's one of the best apps I've used, and I've worked for several different companies. I can also help with any login information and things like that as your agent. But it's a great tool to manage your policy and have it with you at all times. This is my direct contact information. So if anybody would like any further information, or if you would like to email me your deck pages, I'm also a consultant. So even if you just want some insight in the coverages that you have, or what you may be missing, please email me or give me a call, and I'll be happy to help. And that is the end of the auto. We also have home. Home insurance is actually, most people think that the only thing that's covered is the home. It's actually very, very comprehensive, has probably more coverages than your auto policy does, and again, can vary from company to company. Just a few things that we'll discuss today on the agenda: your home insurance, your core coverages, additional and optional coverages, as well as your Liberty Mutual discounts. Review your benefits with Liberty Mutual, and then we'll go over choice, which is those other companies that you can also be quoted through. A few questions that you'll be able to answer by the end of this, by the end of the slideshow here. Will your coverage pay to repair a house? If someone stole your computer and your golf clubs from the backseat of your car, how would they be covered? Are there other damaged structures on your property covered? If you need to stay somewhere else during repairs, will your coverage pay for a hotel? Now, there are several different types of home coverages, from right to left, tenants coverage or renters insurance being the most basic. As you can see here, it really only covers personal property, loss of use, which is that coverage where you would be put up somewhere to live if the home is being repaired for a claim and cannot be lived in. Your liability, in case somebody sues you, medical payments, if somebody gets hurt on your property. Condo insurance is the next step up. We also call those paint-in policies because they cover everything from the paint in. With the condo, you typically do not own the outside structure or the roof of the home. So we cover pretty much everything on the inside, cabinets and fixtures and things of that sort, but the actual building is covered by the HOA master policy. With homeowners insurance, you get other structures included in that. So your garages, your sheds, anything that you own that is detached from the home. Now these coverages A through E, are the same throughout every company. These are not specific to Liberty Mutual. Coverage A will always be dwelling. Coverage B will always be other structures, personal property, and so on and so forth. These coverages, again, can vary from company to company. Most companies will have your other structures, a percentage of the dwelling value, loss of use, as you see here with Liberty Mutual, is actual loss. That is something you want to pay attention to because some companies put a cap on actual loss. So you knock on wood, if something were to happen and you were unable to live in the home, once you run out of that loss of use money, you're on your own. You're paying for your hotel or wherever you're staying out of pocket until the home is repaired. Again, with Liberty Mutual, we don't put a cap on it. We pay out until you are able to move back into the home. Liability is also very, very important. I, as an agent, prefer for that to either match or exceed the value of the home. Liability comes into play. You can roll over somebody's foot in food line and they take you to court. Your liability would come into play then, and we would go to court with you, deal with all of that. And if you were to lose, that's the maximum amount of money that will be paid out in the event that again, the lawsuit is lost. Now, if that money is not enough, that's when they go after your assets, garnish your wages, they put liens on your home. That's why I always suggest people who have, again, stuff, rental homes, 401ks, that you pay attention to these numbers, because they will go after it. Again, both in auto and home claims, it's very, very important that your liability is covered in case you have a bad day or somebody tries to come after you. With personal property, if you were to take your home, turn it upside down and shake it, everything that fell out, that's typically what's covered under your personal property coverage. Now, with dwelling coverage, I get this question all the time when I quote homes. Why is my dwelling coverage so much less than what I pay for my home or the value of my home? Your market value and the replacement value of your home are very commonly, they're actually 99% of the time, two different numbers. What you paid for the home is what it's worth as far as in the market. It's not necessarily the same as what the cost of the home would be to rebuild from the foundation up. I've had houses worth $300,000-$400,000 only come up to rebuild at $200,000. A big reason for that is that the lot your house sits on, the land, is not covered. Again, that's not Liberty Mutual, that's across the board. And this is because land does not burn. You can't exactly steal it. It's there forever and always. So when you get that dwelling coverage, it's typically not going to match, mainly for that reason. And then two, the market value. Your home may just be in an affluent area, but the materials made to rebuild it is not the same as what it was or is in the current market. Now, other structures is, again, anything that's detached from the primary home. Again, it's typically, most companies I quote for, it's 10% of the dwelling value. That also includes anything that's in progress. If you start building a shed or you start building a garage, and somebody steals the materials or they're damaged in a fire in the process, that would fall under other structures. Same with dwelling. If you have materials on the side of your home that you're using to add or build to your dwelling and they're stolen or damaged somehow, that is also covered by the dwelling value. It depends on where everything is situated on the lot. Personal property is covered around the world. So if you have a storage shed, if you have rental properties or anything, even in other countries, make sure that they're included and that you're thinking about those when you're looking at your personal property coverage. It's not just the things that are in your home. Another common thing that comes up are the items in your vehicle. If you have items that are, for example, I'll just tell you a quick story. I had a customer who he was a painter and he was a contractor, and one morning he started his truck, went into the house and came back out, and the truck was gone. They never found the truck. Of course, everything in the truck was gone, never got any of it back. His auto policy covered the vehicle, but he lost money on all the materials and all of the very expensive paints and canvases that were in his truck bed because he did not have renter's insurance. So make sure that you have renter's insurance or your homeowner's insurance covers the things that are in your trucks, in your RVs, things like that, because they're not covered by a standard policy. A standard auto policy. They would fall under your home, your renters, or your condo insurance. And then we just reviewed anywhere around the world is for personal property coverage. We touched a little bit on loss of use. If you cannot live in your home due to a covered loss, we'll cover the additional necessary living expenses. This also covers food if you're in a hotel. If they move you somewhere where it's a little further from work, they'll also even pay for the difference in your gas rates. It's it's a great coverage that I've seen used for up to a year. It's best if that is actual loss sustained. If you have a cap, make sure that number is something that you're comfortable with. Again, on your worst day, we want to make sure that you have enough coverage to get through whatever you're working through, and they have time to fix the claim for you. The deductible is very, very important. Different companies have different rules as far as the deductible goes. I have seen deck pages where the deductible is a percentage. That means a percentage of your dwelling value. I've had customers who have called in claims and they just went with whatever their mortgage company assigned to them, not knowing that their deductible was $2,500. That actually, I just got a call last week. She just went with whatever her mortgage company gave to her, had no clue her deductible is so high. Make sure that it is something that you would be able to come up with in the event that something were to happen today. That money comes out of pocket. They typically don't ask for it until the end of the claim, but it's a lot easier to come up with $500 or $1,000 versus $2,500. Do not base your decision off the lowest premium. Always ask about that deductible. There's also, with homeowners, 2 or 3 different deductibles depending on the company. You have your standard deductible, which is fire, water, lightning. They call them other perils or all perils. Hurricane and wind and hail can have separate deductibles with most companies. Make sure that those are numbers that you're comfortable with. So you'll see 1,000 initially and then want to just put it away. Make sure you search your deck page to make sure that they have not separated that hurricane or that wind and hail deductible to, again, typically I see them as percentages, 1%, 2%. I've seen them as high as 5%, especially that hurricane deductible. To make the premium lower, make sure it's a number that you're comfortable with if something were to happen. Now, when does personal liability coverage protect against injuries occurring on your property? Only if the injury occurs to a visitor. Now, I'll just tweak this a little bit by saying somebody can trespass on your property, especially if you have a pool, trampoline, things like that. That is why companies are very, very particular about those things. If it happens all the time, people using other people's pools and they get hurt, whether the owner knows they're there or not, you are liable for that person's injury. So the visitor may be welcomed or unwelcomed. That would fall under your liability coverage if they were to come back and sue you for any injuries that occurred on your property. Injuries can happen anytime without warning, but the right personal liability coverage, you are protected against injuries visitors sustain on your property that you're legally liable for. I had a customer who got sued because a little girl next door wandered over looking for their dog. They weren't home. Dog wasn't home. They were actually on vacation. They had everything done correctly, had the fence up, everything. Little girl came over. She slipped and fell and hit her head on a dog bone. Went home. Her parents actually sued my client, and they lost $300,000 for the head wound and liability. And they weren't even home. And the little girl had essentially been over there without permission. Again, see it all the time with pools and things of that sort. So make sure your liability limits covers the value of your home and all of your assets. Again, those 401ks, any future income, we want to make sure that you are protected against anything if you have these things on your property, or just in general. You don't even have to have a pool to check these things or a trampoline. Make sure that your assets are completely covered, again, so we can provide protection for you on your worst day. Coverage, liability, medical payments. Medical payments is typically maxed out at $10,000. Again, that depends on the company. They tend to pay that out before they do the liability. Liability is only if you're taken to court. Again, litigation, any certified letters, court hearings, things like that fall under liability and won't take care of it. But medical payments, again, if you have children, trampolines, pools, just if you have visitors a lot, you may think about upping your medical payments to make sure that you have that coverage where you need it to be. This is actually, I offer these all the time, umbrella policies. If you have any of, if I'm talking to a customer and any of these come up, I hear you just retired, so you have a large 401k, you have rental properties, secondary homes, pools, trampolines. If you have a dog or animals on the property, liability also comes into play with animal bites, high earning potentials, or those teen drivers. You may want to consider an umbrella policy. An umbrella policy, exactly what it sounds like. It goes over both the auto and the home. It adds an additional $1 million in coverage to both policies if the coverage that you currently have is not enough. Again, those lawsuits or those bodily injury lawsuits for auto, if they max out your policies, you have the umbrella policy to fall back on so that they don't have to garnish your wages. They don't have to put a lien on your home or take one of the homes. All of that, even the money in your whole life policies and your universal life policies, all of that is on the table if you were to lose in a lawsuit. They will find money any way they can. So we want to make sure that everything is protected. Just write a list of your current assets. And if they're above your current liability limits, you may want to call your insurance agent and ask about an umbrella policy to make sure everything is covered. These are a few of the additional coverages that I go over when I review people's homeowners insurance. Water backup is the biggest one. It's the most common claim I see that's typically not covered by a homeowner's policy. Again, this is not just Liberty Mutual. This is across the board. You typically have to ask for it, or it has to be endorsed, meaning it has to be added to your standard homeowner's policy. It also covers, it's also called sump pump overflow coverage, because it covers your sump pump overflowing, of course. It's a little different from flooding. Flooding is when water comes from the outside in. Water backup is the backwards flow of water from the inside out. I've had customers who have exposed pipes and things like that, or have had things flushed down their pipes. When the water has nowhere to go, it comes back into the house. That's water backup. I've had individuals who have crawl spaces in the water table. It rains really bad. The water table gets so high, the water comes up through the floor. That's water backup. They're very expensive claims. The smallest one I've seen has been about $8,000-9,000, and that was because it affected one room. I've seen them get up to 50. It's definitely one of those coverages where it's better to have it and not need it than need it and not have it. They're very, very messy claims. Please ask your insurance agent or have me quote it for you to see what the water backup would look like on your current policy. A lot of people don't know that your homeowner's policy also covers identity theft protection. They cover the cost for sending those certified letters and speaking to the IR litigation, all of that. Most companies, most credit card companies and things like that have the coverage as well. But if you were to find that they're not doing enough for you, or you don't have it for whatever reason, you can ask for it on your homeowner's policy. Sinkhole collapse, scheduled property, home and computer endorsement, those are exactly what they sound like. Scheduled property is probably the most common one that I have brought up. Again, not just Liberty Mutual, this is across the board. There are caps on certain items in your home if they're not scheduled or laid out for the insurance company to recognize as high value. Jewelry, furs, firearms, expensive art, things like that have to be scheduled, or you have to let your company know that you have them, because they have limits of either $1,500 or $2,500. So knock on wood, say you were to come home and everything's gone, everything's been stolen, your jewelry, your gun collection, there are caps on those items. So you would need to tell your insurance company that you have them and what they're valued at in order to max out your coverage and make sure that you get everything that you're owed. Home computer endorsement, it's another coverage where there's a cap on it that varies from company to company. But if you have, you're like me and you have the computer, the computer screens everywhere and everybody has iPads and things like that, you may want to ask your insurance agent about the home computer endorsement, because there is a cap on that as well. They'll even cover your Apple Watches and your iPhones, things like that, if you don't have insurance. And sometimes it's cheaper than getting the Apple Care. So you may want to have that quoted and brought up as well, looking at your current coverages. All of these would show up under the additional coverages or the endorsement section of your deck page. They're not typically on that first page. So if you're looking to see if you have these, you might have to flip through your deck page, or you can send your deck page to me and I will double check for you to make sure if any of these are a concern for you. Again, homeowners with Liberty Mutual, you have exclusive group savings, your multi-policy discount, and we have the ability to apply those across different companies. Protective devices, please make sure you tell your company if you have an alarm system, whether it's local or reports to a central station. Insured to value discount, that's essentially making sure that you have not cut any corners with your insurance and your dwelling value. Claims free, newly purchased home, if you have recently renovated, I won't say renovated, they don't particularly care about the like the kitchens and the bathroom. With renovated home discount, that's typically your HVAC, your electric, your plumbing, and your roof. If you've had any of those done recently, call your insurance company, let them know, and watch your premium fall. With Liberty Mutual, again, you get your local licensed sales agent. After hours policy services, most of my customers have my business cell, 24-hour claims assistance, your 12-month rate lock. With auto, your rate lock can be either 6 months or 12 months. Most homeowners policies are 12 months. Emergency home repair service will come out and make sure that no further damage is being done to your home if you have leaks and things like that, if you need help. And personal property replacement service, where our claim service is phenomenal. So you get all of these benefits with Liberty Mutual. Again, with having a personal agent, it makes things a lot simpler when you have questions, claims, or issues. You also have access to your homeowner's policy through the Liberty Mutual app that we discussed previously before. Again, you can file and manage your claims, take pictures, and get money same day sometimes when you file online. We'll make sure that you have the perfect customized coverage here with Liberty Mutual. We consult, we shop for you, and we choose your coverage based off of your needs for you and your family. And again, here is my contact information. If you want to send me your deck pages, if you have any questions about your current coverages or what you may or may not have, any language in your current policy you're not clear on, please just give me a call and I'll be happy to help.